This is a war that almost no one remembers. No tanks, no planes, no deaths. And yet, it reshaped global law, geopolitics, and the power of small nations. I'm talking about the Cod Wars, a series of confrontations between Iceland and the United Kingdom from 1958 to 1976. It sounds silly at first. Fishing boats, ramming, net cutting. But the stakes? Enormous. Why cod? For Iceland, cod was survival. By the 1950s, fishing accounted for over 90% of Iceland's export income. Entire towns depended on it. Cod wasn't just food, it was the economy, it was identity, it was the lifeblood of the nation. For Britain, Icelandic waters had been a tradition. Generations of trawlers had fished there, and crews felt entitled to keep going. They didn't understand conservation, they understood profit. Let's go back to 1958, the beginning of the First Cod War. At that time, international law only recognized a 3-mile territorial sea. Iceland extended its fishing zone to 12 nautical miles, citing overfishing concerns. Britain refused to recognize this. British trawlers continued fishing as if nothing had changed. Iceland's solution? Patrol ships and net cutters. They didn't have a navy like Britain. They had small, fast vessels with crews determined to protect their resources. When a British trawler entered Icelandic waters, the patrol boats would cut its nets, destroying thousands of pounds of fishing gear instantly. British warships escorted their trawlers, trying to block the Icelandic boats. There were ramming incidents, hull damage, paint scratched. No one fired a gun. And yet, it was terrifying for the crews. Iceland eventually forced Britain to accept the 12-mile limit. Victory number 1 for the tiny nation. Fast forward to 1972. Overfishing in the North Atlantic was worsening. Iceland expanded its fishing zone to 50 nautical miles. Britain objected. The Royal Navy returned. Escalations increased. The net cutter became Iceland's weapon of choice. Entire catches disappeared in seconds. Trawlers were stranded with no fish. British frigates rammed Icelandic patrol boats. Over 20 ships were damaged during this period. Again, no fatalities, but the stakes were geopolitical. Iceland had a secret weapon, geopolitics itself. During the Cold War, Iceland hosted a strategic NATO airbase at Keflavik, used to monitor Soviet submarines. Iceland threatened to leave NATO and close the base, giving the US real reason to intervene. The US pressured Britain. Iceland's 50-mile limit was recognized. Victory number 2. But Iceland wasn't done. In 1975, the nation extended its fishing zone to 200 nautical miles. This was unprecedented. No international law yet recognized such a limit. Britain objected immediately. Ramming intensified. Net cutting continued. Tensions rose. Diplomatic relations were strained. Ships were damaged. The Royal Navy even suffered a boat tear in one of the collisions. Once again, Iceland used geopolitical leverage. By threatening to pull out of NATO, they forced Britain into compromise. By 1976, Britain accepted the 200-mile limit. Iceland had won every single round. The consequences of this war were massive. 1. Maritime law. Iceland's actions influenced the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Today, 200-mile exclusive economic zones are standard worldwide. 2. Power dynamics. Small nations could now leverage resources and strategy against much larger powers. David versus Goliath wasn't just a story, it was reality. 3. Environmental lessons. The Cod Wars highlighted the need for sustainable fishing practices, centuries before climate change debates became mainstream. 4. Diplomacy over force. This conflict showed that nonviolent economic and political pressure could achieve more than conventional warfare. Let's step back and think about life at sea during these conflicts. Imagine being a fisherman in the North Atlantic. It's freezing, stormy, and unpredictable. You're fighting not just the ocean, but another nation's navy. Your livelihood depends on a single, slippery species of fish. Icelandic patrol crews lived this tension every day. They were small, outnumbered, but fearless. They understood the stakes, cod or collapse. Meanwhile, British trawlers, backed by frigates, faced immense pressure. Ramming incidents could have ended careers, or worse. Every voyage was tense. And yet, humor existed. Reports talk about Cod Wars antics like boats trying to outmaneuver each other, sudden net cuts, and the absurdity of ramming small patrol vessels with massive warships. History sometimes has a sense of irony. This is why the Cod Wars are overlooked. No large-scale battles, no deaths, no headlines outside Europe. But the story is incredible. It teaches a lesson. Strategy, leverage, and persistence matter more than size. By the time the wars ended, Iceland had achieved more than fishing rights. It had set global precedents, ensured national survival, and proved the influence of small nations in international politics. And here's the modern relevance. Resource conflicts are everywhere. Water, oil, rare minerals, and even fish are global hotspots. The Cod Wars show that careful strategy and negotiation can shape the rules before crisis strikes. So the next time you think about global power, remember, it's not just about armies or money. Sometimes it's about foresight, courage, and the fish in the ocean. Small actions, smart moves, and a deep understanding of what the other side cannot afford to lose. The Cod Wars were more than a battle over cod. They were a lesson in strategy, diplomacy, and resilience. And in a world full of conflicts, it's worth remembering, even the smallest players can change the rules forever.